we see that there's so much more technology available to recruitment agencies than there's ever been before, right? And because of that, it's often that recruitment agencies will bring new technology into their business, but then they often struggle with the adoption of it within their teams. We think of, as a recruiter, there's actually so much going on in your day-to-day. When you're being thrown tons of tech onto the plate as well, it can be hard to understand exactly what to do and why you're doing it. Obviously the work that we do at Sourcewell, we speak about this a lot, is about having a commitment to adoption, throughout the entire process and throughout the entire cycle. There's often this misconception that adoption is something that people should focus on once the contract is signed, but it actually starts way, way, way before that. So Ben, as VP of Sales for our EMEA region, you just talk a little bit around what recruitment agencies should be looking out for during a sales process to make sure that they're bringing on a platform that is actually likely to be adopted by the team that they have in place.
Yeah, good question. It's I think often one that a lot of agencies typically struggle with if they don't know what they're looking for. And I think that's the key part, is going in with a plan. Like, that's definitely the first thing I advise any agency looking to bring on any tech. Like, start with a plan, look at what you're trying to solve within your organization, break that problem down, because whatever the surface problem may be appearing as, whether it's for your consultants moaning or you've got data integrity issues or anything like that, really try and get to the bottom or the root cause of what is causing it. That's the first thing, is a lot of people come with a problem and actually they end up having to go and buy all this other tech because they're actually trying to solve something they don't know about. But anyway, brings me on to the second point, which is making sure that you go through a proper discovery process.
Yeah.
Once you've got your plan
100%.
and once you've got the understanding of what you're trying to achieve, then make sure you go through a proper discovery process to really dig into the details of what it is you're trying to solve, why you're trying to solve it, how you're going to measure the impact of a solution within your organization. I think that's often something that people miss out on. They think they're going to get a great solution and actually have no way of tracking or measuring the improvements that they're making anyway, or don't have a benchmark to start from. So you've got no way to measure things like ROI.
Totally, and I think you're spot on with what you're saying there as well, because by really committing to that discovery process with a potential supplier, you're opening up to, exactly like you said, all of the things that are happening within your organization, which means when you're then receiving that proposal from them, or you're going through that kind of process with them, they're able to show you exactly where they can have an impact. And if that's not where you need them to have an impact, then at least you're finding out early doors, right? And you're able to rule it out at that point. But if you do feel like it's going to have a massive impact, then that makes it much easier for you to then subsequently communicate that with the people within the organization, such as your users and consultants, about why this change or why this transformation is taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably the third point I'd say is super important. It's something that I think a lot of businesses definitely fall down on quite early on in the process, is not involving the stakeholders that it's going to affect early on enough in the buying process, so they feel invested enough to then be excited and want to use the tool. And actually, it's a really easy process to do, in that often when we go through a buying process with a customer, we'll look at speaking to the person who's obviously going to make decisions. We'll look at the management team or the ops team, the people that are going to help us implement it. But also we want to speak to the people that are going to be using it day in, day out. They're ultimately the people that are going to be using your platform. And if they're not involved in that process early on, that's where I feel a lot of companies miss out on that adoption cycle, because we've all had it, right? You get a new piece of shiny tech gets dumped in front of you and they say, right, use this. And you're like, well, what's it do? Why did we get it? Like, I'm not sure this solves my problems. Actually, if they've been involved in that early conversation where they're talking about their problems, and yeah, they might align with other problems that other people are facing across the business, then actually they feel like it's part of their decision and they're much more invested in making it successful because they're part of that.
Absolutely. And I think you also find sometimes when it's just the more senior people involved in an organization, you think as a senior person, you know exactly how your business runs, but actually getting those users involved, and they turn around and say, actually, this isn't, you thought we do things like this, but we really don't. This product isn't going to achieve what we needed to achieve. So I think just involving them so they're excited when they come on board and start using the users, and actually qualifying that it is the tool that you think as a decision maker and a buyer you actually need. Are they the same thing?
Absolutely. And I think it's so magical though when that comes together. Like we were talking about the problems that it can create if you don't do that. But actually, when you do that during a buying cycle, actually think of how engaged and aligned everybody is, and the adoption that then happens as a result of it, right? And how everyone makes sure that pushes through. Tim, obviously you were mentioning there around people maybe not, involving the senior team, involving the users, because the senior team can often sometimes be a little bit disconnected. Obviously as CEO, we work really closely together sorry, that made it sound as if I'm the CEO. Let me just rephrase that.
It starts now.
Tim, obviously, as CEO of the company, you're involved in a lot of parts of the organisation, but you spend a lot of time with our product team as well. So I'm not sure if you can share a little bit from your perspective about what recruitment agencies should be looking for from a product perspective, or should be asking about from a product perspective during the process to make sure they're getting something that actually fits the bill for what they need.
I think it's a really good question. It's quite multifaceted, but I think one of the first things is working out whether the product you're trying to buy is replacing something or it's actually complementary and it's linking things together, because those are two very different use cases. If you're going to be ripping a tool out, that is a longer process. That is one where you definitely need to involve the users and actually properly map out flows. Whereas if you're adding something that's complementary, there's going to be less objections from the team as well. So I think initially from that, is it a rip and replace or is it a complementary tool is one as well. I think there's also just the crucial part of saying the salespeople, and bless them, I love them, they will always have a good sell for their product. They've got their talk tracks, right?
Yeah.
But it's making sure, does the product actually do what you need it to do? And that's not just at a surface level. That is, if it has integrations, does it, every product has especially in the HR tech, rec tech space, every product has an integration into pretty much everything else, but not all integrations are born equal. What does that integration actually do? And I think it's also about, especially as maybe a non-techie buyer as well, is not being afraid and not being put off by the process, and not being afraid to admit, what does that actually mean? What is that integration? How does it work? How does this field map to this and that? And it sounds like very, very detailed, but the devil is in the detail. And again, when you roll that out to users, you'll find, it's got an integration, but actually it's not the kind of integration you desired. So,
I was gonna say, actually, that process as well starts in the sales cycle. It starts as part of that discovery phase, and making sure that if you're going through that buying process, that actually the supplier or whoever you're buying it off is mapping that out for you before you're actually signing up to anything. You want to know what your current state is and what you're going to be getting to and how that's going to happen. I'm not going to jump on CS's opportunity here with Hannah. I'm sure she'll come on to it, but I think that's something that's again often missed, or people leave it too late in the process to start going through the detailed stuff.
Yeah. Totally right, and I agree with both of what you're saying there as well. Is you see people who get really excited. We've talked about how we can cure the buy-in and the engagement of consultants when we're bringing new technology into our businesses. But if they start actually using it and then it's broken or it's flawed or it doesn't deliver what they thought it would, then there's no bigger killer of adoption than the initial excited individual who has all of the motivation to use it, but actually can't. And then it really falls away. And I think when you find yourself in that position, or if I speak to people who have had failed implementations of technology or big digital transformation projects over the years where it hasn't gone well or it's dragged out, and some of these kind of the largest kind of enterprise agencies and staffing firms, it's exactly at those moments. It's at the moments where the communication alignment has been really strong, but the product has actually let them down because at some point in the process, the big, deep questions just never got asked. But you're super curious. You always ask questions, so.
Stop.
So Hannah, obviously when we take, from a sales perspective and from a product perspective, we bring that all together. Obviously, working within our customer success department, you have so much exposure to the kind of processes, not just post-signature. I'm sure you'll probably touch on what we do kind of pre-signature, but tell us a little bit more about what an agency or staffing firm should be looking out for from a customer success standpoint when they're bringing in new technology.
Yeah, for sure. So echoing what everyone's already said, it's really important that early on, it's not just the leadership team bringing on this product and then dumping it, as Ben said, in front of the users. It's important that that buying comes in really early and that motivation carries on throughout the rest of the process as well. And what we've been doing in CS is having a very hands-on experience of sharing and getting an understanding from the leadership team and what they're looking for, how they measure success, what that looks like, why they bought the product, and then making sure that as we start to roll it out to the users, they fully buy into that concept as well. We share that with them, get their take on it, and just make sure that they're fully understanding what it is that they're signing up for as well.
Totally. And I think there's that really nice thing as well where you have that kind of combination between both the sales and the success teams around the success planning. So working together, as a potential purchaser of software, seeing we've all been there, right? We've worked with a solutions provider where the salesperson, basically, as soon as you sign the contract, you never hear from them again, right? Like they kind of run off into the mists. I'm saying that as a seasoned salesperson, so I'm slating myself here. But I think like the reality of the situation is that. But I think like when you see a potential supplier where there really is that collaboration, and I think when you touched on there about really understanding why this product's been brought in, and the salesperson has that information, they've done all of this discovery process, so. As a potential purchaser, you want to see them connecting all of the conversations you've had during that sales cycle with what's going to happen post-sale. And mapping that all out before that contract is signed, I think again is a really important part of it as well. You talked around rolling that out to the users and things as well. How important do you feel communication is from the business owner to the consultants throughout that process?
Yeah, very important. It's critical that the leadership team, the management team, whoever buys the product is part of that journey as well. Making sure that we do continuous check-ins is really important at an individual user level, but also with the management team later on, just checking in, getting a feel from them, what they think the success is like, what sort of results they're seeing on the inside as well. And also just making sure that what we ironed out in the sales process, again, is still being translated even after the initial onboarding is done, like moving forward, is that adoption carrying through the way that we thought it would? And if not, why not? And how can we help improve it?
I think just to add from my side, even just speaking from Sourcewell's experience, is seeing the difference it makes when you can have the best sales process and the strongest product, but not taking people on that journey, because the hardest bit is genuinely once the product's been built and you've got a customer using it, is actually that change management piece. It's humans. They will come in every day and they're the ones that are using this platform. Yeah. And actually, unless you have that really, really strong connection and understand what their needs and wants are, and you get that constant support post-contract signature, and you guys have potentially disappeared. It really is about that handoff, and the difference that I've seen in having that white glove experience and having someone to support not just the leader that made the decision to purchase the software, but the users day to day, and the difference it makes. We could have two recruitment agencies, two staffing agencies that are identical in use case, and we could have found one that had no value at all. And honestly, the key difference there is just the fact that they didn't have a proper onboarding experience, or they didn't have that ongoing onboarding experience to get that change management piece amongst their users. It's genuinely game changing.
100%. And we talk about the framework within the customer success department around adoption, outcomes, and experience. And if we have that that kind of triangle at any point, if they all feed into each other, right? So during that onboarding process, we need to ensure adoption. We need to ensure that adoption leads to outcomes, and we need to make sure that although people are using the product and getting outcomes from it, that the experience that they have whilst using that product as a user is one that they actually enjoy as well. And when those three things come together, it's magical, right? It's so good. I think the final thing I would note as well, and I know we discussed this just earlier, is the combination and the partnership approach. Yeah. So, working in partnership during a sales process of any new technology that you're bringing into your recruitment business or your recruitment agency is definitely more common now than it's ever been. But making sure that partnership continues on post-sale, and it's not just a case of, well, I've signed the contract and I've paid the money, and now expect, you to kind of press the buttons and make all these kind of magical returns appear. That kind of continuous partnership and continuous support comes from both sides, right? And again, if we look at some of the most successful customers that you're working with, Hannah, there really is that kind of continuous collaboration, and there's checking in, there's data flow, but like you said, it's coming from both sides of the fence as well.
Yeah, for sure. And something that I found that's really helpful as well is identifying champion users. So just day-to-day people who are not necessarily, the top salesperson in that team or getting the biggest deals, but they're the ones that buy into the adoption, they absorb the concept, and they're the ones that live and breathe it every day. And they're a huge part of that collaboration and partnership, because they're kind of bringing it in from the ground up and just really emulating that messaging and helping kind of set a benchmark for the rest of the team of what they could do without even having to be the number one sales guy. Like, you can get really great results out of it just from being, yourself.
Love that. Excellent. I think we could probably sit and actually talk about this topic for hours, but hopefully that's given people an insight in terms of what they should be looking out for if they're bringing technology into their business to ensure that it's not just technology that comes in and sits on the shelf, but it's actually technology that comes in, is adopted, leads to outcomes, and generally provides a really good experience for them as well. Thanks very much.